All right, so I think we're going to get started. Thanks everyone for being here and welcome to Bringing Worlds and Creatures to Life, Maximizing Maya and Arnold as a Generalist. We have two great speakers with us today, but before I give them the floor, a couple things. We do have a Q&A box, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. It's at the bottom right, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So as questions pop out throughout, just leave them there. And we also have a chat box. So if you just want to drop a comment, share where you're from, you can use the chat. And this is also being recorded. So if you want to go back and watch anything that's shared today, you can do so. We'll be emailing it to you in the days that follow. And lastly, we're also launching some polls. So if you see a little pop-up come up during the presentation, it's just us trying to learn more about you, asking you some questions. Um, and I see some people already dropping in where they're from. Denmark. Lovely. All right. So enough talking for me. I want to welcome the incredible award-winning VFX studio, VineFX, based in Cambridge. They worked on some really incredible projects, and to tell you a little bit about them today, we have their head of CG, and Jake Newton, CG lead. So without further ado, Jake, I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you, and thanks for having us. Thank you, Autodesk, for organizing it. It's really nice to be here and to be sharing what we do. Yeah, our talk today is about bringing creatures and worlds to life. We're quite a small studio, if you've not heard of us. We'll get into a lot of the things about how we deal with that, but we want to just sort of share how we do things. We're going to start just by introducing ourselves. So I'm going to go over to Jake.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Jake Newton. I'm a CG generalist and CG lead at VineFX. I've been here for coming up on 4 years now. It was my first full-time job straight out of university, where I studied the artificial effects at Escape Studios. I did a very short stint at Time-Based Arts, and then, like I said, just been here ever since.
There you go. And yeah, I'm Ped. I started out with a degree in visual effects and concept design at Staffordshire University. And then I moved to get my first job at a little studio in the south of England called Bandito, where I actually started as a compositor. And as time went on, I sort of found my feet more into the 3D side, more than the 2D side. And that's where I first found Arnold as well. So it was still in beta back then, all those many years ago. And we were using it quite extensively on a movie that we were working on with loads of CG in it. And then from then on, I went to MPC commercials for about 3.5 years, where they were also using quite a lot of Maya and Arnold as well. So it's been quite heavily ingrained in what I do for the last few years. And after that, I moved to VineFX, where the CG department was very small. It was just me and like a couple of other guys. So there wasn't much of a pipeline, and I had the opportunity to sort of build it how I like to work, which is mostly then was Maya and Arnold. So I got to sort of keep that going as well. And just going to go through our highlight reel. So that's the work that we've been up to over the past few years, and we've managed to work with some really good clients such as Disney, Netflix, and Amazon. So we've had some really nice high profile shows under our belts, um, such as The Witcher. That's probably one that quite a few of you have seen, perhaps. As well as some other ones like The Tourist, which we're going to talk about, is a show that I really enjoyed working on, but also one that I really enjoyed to watch afterwards, just in its own right. It was one of those sort of gems where you don't know much about the backstory of it because it's not been a book or anything, but when you watch it, it's just quite captivating and a really good story. And there's also things like War of the Worlds and After the Flood, which we're going to be talking about as well. We've also been lucky enough to win a few awards over these few years, and probably the highlight, especially on my part, is the BAFTA nomination that we got for War of the Worlds. Just to be recognized and put up against some of the bigger studios that do, really high budget, really cool work. Just to be recognized was cool, even if we didn't win. Just to be there was a significant accolade for us. And in terms of the 3D team itself, we're usually like 10 regular artists, maybe a few here and there either side. But we can expand and grow as we need to. As the work comes in, we've got more and more jobs coming in, we will expand. We went up to 20 artists for 3D artists anyway on a project last year, which was the biggest we've been, and even by most company standards, still quite small. So a relatively small studio, but with a lot of grunt behind it, we output some really high-end work, which is really nice. And we're quite flexible with how we work. So some people come in the studio, some people are fully remote. I do hybrid. We've got people all over Europe working with us, and it's a really nice mix of cultures. And we've got bigger and bigger jobs coming in. The more work we do, the more people see it, and bigger shows come. And we get to show all of the departments of 3D that we do, because we do all types. There's nothing that we sort of outsource or that we can't do. We do everything from creatures, props, and effects, and so on. So we're going to be talking about environments to begin with, and it's going to be quite broad. So there's a few different types of environments that we're going to talk about. The first one is from The Witcher Season 3. This was the first season that we worked on for The Witcher, and it was definitely a highlight. It was a really cool, fun project to work on. And in this sequence in particular, it's a really long sequence. As you can see, there's a lot going on. We've got magic, we've got sword extensions, there's a load of blood, there's mist and fog and all the trees in the background as well, all full CG. And we're going to go into that now.
Cool. So from more of a build phase for specifically the Sherwood Forest environment, there was three main artists working on that, and all three of us were generalists. One which was more focused on the texture side of things, but all of us still had generalist traits. There's 120 tree variations with scattered rocks and other vegetation patches that we would scatter around to really kind of minimize having any repetition to make it feel really alive. And as you can see at the bottom, the whole shot was fully 360, so every single angle is seen. So minimizing any repetition is really key. There's three main sort of hero assets to this. There's the hero tree, which is the dead tree that you kind of can see in the background image, and the main monolith at the back. And then along with that is the hero ruins itself. So for optimization, it's very important for us to optimize and keep everything as refined as possible, mainly because we're a small team and we have to make sure that we can deliver on time and within budget, while also rendering the entire thing. So this shot was 725 frames long, so that's a ton of frames to render with multiple passes. So doing that for many iterations really builds up. So keeping everything tight was very important. All of the trees were animated alembic caches with wind from SpeedTree. All of these are run through AI stand-ins, which is a great way to optimize your scene and push everything to render time. And they were scattered using Mash for rotation and scale variation. And then everything as well in the scene was TX'd using the Arnold TX Manager, which kept render times optimized and quick. So here's just an example of some of the trees that we use. This is all of them. The four species, we had linden trees, Scots pines, oak trees, and then some birch trees. And the idea being is just the more we have, we could just randomize from SpeedTree, bring it straight into Maya, run them through the stand-ins, set it up through the Mash network, and then we had all of the repetition that we needed, sorry, the randomization that we needed to fill the scene. So this is the hero structure in the center, which I was just talking about. The monolith at the back is the main hero asset that was built very separately along with the tree. That was modeled in Maya and then textured in Substance Painter, brought back into the main scene for the build. The actual structure in the center is a LiDAR scan from the set. This was only really used for the shot looking up towards the ruins, because you can get away with that using DMP patches and stuff to clean anything up. And then other than that, it's just used for light bouncing. And here's some close-ups where you can see. So we had to make sure everything was optimized and held up to camera really nicely, and also visible from all the way around in that shot, and also the full sequence going forward. And then a really quick example of just the match network. So we have the ground, which is taken from a match move from a previous shot. So the match move department would send us this, scatter on it, everything then can line up really nicely. It's super efficient. You can visualize quite quickly. In this case, we've just got bounding boxes, but you can change it to polygons. You can view it however you need, and get a really quick, really nice result that is optimized and ready to go for lighters and then to send to the farm.
And this is how it all came together in the end. It looks pretty seamless to me. I think, you don't even really question the trees in the background. There's a nice variation. They move, they've got the wind in them, like Jake said. And with all the effects going on in the middle of the frame, your eyes are drawn to all the action rather than being distracted. So yeah, mission accomplished, and we're really pleased with how the whole shot in the end came out. And then moving on from that, which is quite a contrast, is a show called After the Flood, which was on ITV. And this one was one that I absolutely love talking about because it's just such a cool shot. For the show, it was mostly comp work, so there wasn't a whole lot of CG anyway. So it was mostly comp, and this was just one hero shot basically. And you can see this whole town has been flooded, is the plot. And this is the end frame that we saw. And if I just draw a bounding box around what was actually real, the rest beyond that is all CG. So we fully rendered everything from the water, the cars, the trees, everything was all full CG. So there's like a tiny amount of plate really, and that was shot on a drone in this set. So you'll see that they sort of filmed it. Oh, it's paused. There we go. Try again. It was filmed in this backlot car park somewhere. We got rid of everything beyond it. We kept the tank in the middle, and all of our assets then scattered and dropped in just like this. Super easy, as you can tell. But there's a lot of work here. There's a whole lot of things going on in that shot. And typically that's something that you would see a much bigger team or a big team would accomplish. You would have multiple texture artists, multiple asset artists, lighters, effects people. But we didn't do that.
So yeah, just a bit more about that. So there was only two of us working on this. It was myself and Matt McKinney. And like Ped said, this is quite an ambitious shot really, because it's such a small amount of plate left. The environment all around it had a ton to make it feel alive and enough, to fill it out enough to really sell the shot. So a really important thing that we had to do is distribute the tasks and the assets that were needed between the two of us based on our skill sets, but also capacity. Being a smaller company, it's very important that we make sure that we're not overworking specific people, because a lot of us work across multiple shows at the same time. So keeping communication and brief very important. All kind of comes into one package, and that's done very early on. So also, because it was a very small team, just the two of us, we have to really try and cut corners where we can and optimize, especially when it's a small show like this. The budget's not massive, and we just have to really push what we can for the client, while optimizing and keeping everything deliverable. So a little bit of shot information. This shot itself was 458 frames. So it's a full CG environment, as we mentioned, and the required assets for the scattering in the external area outside of the roofs and beyond was cars, trees, debris, foliage, and then the hero assets were the two rooftops either side and the rooftop at the back, because these are used in multiple shots, not just this shot, and they become quite close to camera. So we had to make sure that these were treated as separate assets. And then the water itself, another way that we did this to kind of keep cutting corners and sort of optimizing the scene, was to do it through animated normal maps procedurally, rather than simulating a big area of water. So one of the methods that we used for this, which is highlighting again kind of where we can save time while not losing quality, is we had a big drone survey of the town that we were supposed to be replacing beyond the plate. So we ran that through reality capture, which outputted a decent enough scan. However, it's not really production ready and worthy just to drop in and go. So we would take that into Maya, retopologize the whole thing, and then project the textures back off that scan with some cleanup. And then you end up with what you see on the right-hand side, which is we kind of treated them as modular area, like kit bash areas, where we could then slot and replace the scene based off the how the story is being told and the continuity for that location. So the hero asset is this is our standard asset workflow. We model in Maya, and then we'll then bring that into Substance Painter, and then all of the look dev and the assembly of the scene is all done in Maya for this. So it's just making sure that your shaders are all set up correctly and it's all lit in Maya nicely.
Thank you. And yeah, that goes on to our next project, which was the Lazarus Project Season 2. That was on Sky. And here we can see this environment was quite different. So this is a huge cave, basically. It's an underground facility, and it is enormous. I guess it doesn't fully show in the video how big it is, but it is massive. And it was a full CG environment. We had to keep everything realistic in terms of how it all works. So there's a lift shaft or elevator shaft that comes down from the outside world into the actual building. And they only built a very small amount of it on set. So they obviously had the actors walking around on this little platform, but that was as far as it went. And the full CG beyond that was all done by us. We had to build that section in CG as well, because there were some shots which were just full CG and there was no cameras able to do the moves that we did. And then there's a pod which goes down a big runway, which picks up speed, a really long tunnel that goes to the time traveling zone.
So jumping into this a little bit deeper, I suppose, we have, like Ped mentioned, this was a huge asset for us, and it's all enclosed. So everything outside is, it's all in a big cave that's been dug out by the people in the story. And there was two main areas for this that we really had to focus on, which is the main platform in the main cave area, and then the tunnel itself. These are sort of treated separately initially and then fused together because you have to integrate it really nicely. So we also had to have crowds to really make it feel alive down on the bottom. These are seen over the balcony and the edge in quite a lot of shots. So it's just some motion capture characters just with a seamless loop that they're just walking along the ground. Some construction vehicles, and then the hero pod asset, which we see in a few shots where we had to animate it quite close up, and then for the rest of the sequence where it's flying down the track and down into the tunnel. And this environment was used in 93 shots. So there was 4 main artists working on this, an environment artist, 1 generalist, and 2 lighters. The environment artist started off by generating all of the rocks and sort of laying out the set and putting it all together and generating everything that we needed. And in doing that, generated over 800 different variations of rocks, ground and other assets, ground like scatter, pebbles, dust, stones, various sort of things to really sell the environment. And the tunnel itself is, as Ped mentioned, very long. It's actually 2.5 kilometers long. So this was quite a big Maya scene to navigate around. So yeah, and then we had the one hero asset in the center, which is the pod. And then the platform beyond to the left-hand side, which you can see in the corner here, included the lift shaft, and there was also a carriage inside of that, as well as a little structure where some other action takes place. So for optimization, as I've said a few times already, and it will be the theme of this, is optimizing as much as we can as a small team, and really making sure that we can deliver on time and to the best standard we can. So what we tend to use a lot of for big environments like this is the heavy use of AI stand-ins. They're super efficient, and as you can see, there's a mix of bounding boxes and polygons that you can sort of see as their drawing display. And that just is very easy to navigate around. Most people, you can pick it up as a lighter and sort of understand where your shot's taking place. You input your camera, okay, everything's sort of ready to go. And then here you can see the crowd agents down the bottom and the rest of the scene. So the tunnel this is the platform going down into the tunnel, as well as some lights in the master scene that we had. So the main workflow for this shot was we used flow production tracking for the sequence, where the environment artist would generate all of the separate publishes and saves that they needed. So the parts of the platform might be done as a separate asset, and then the lift shaft might be done. That's all imported into the main build scene by the load feature in flow production tracking, which is great. And then these references show up in the scene breakdown, where if let's say the environment artist would publish a new version, I could then import that, bring that into the build. If I know that there's a new publish and they've not mentioned it, it will show up as red. Just update it, and bam, straight away everything's updated really nicely in the scene. So once this stage is done, is then I would publish that scene and pass this over to the lighters. So they would just have one very, very, very clean scene with one reference that comes in through the scene breakdown. And then if I push an update to them, they can just import it and everything's ready to go without really necessarily like breaking their scene in any way. So it's a very non-destructive way of working. And one really extra quick thing that I thought would be of note, because of the amount of rocks that we had in here and various assets that typically would be using displacement and displacement maps to really push it at render time. That was kind of not really that's a way that we couldn't really spend the amount of time of setting up all of those shaders. So we decided to do it with an Arnold operator, which just swaps the low poly mesh in the scene to the high poly mesh in the scene. This is all done based off a string, and in a folder you'll have all of your low poly versions and all of your high poly exports. So once you push it to render, everything gets swapped out, and it's a really nice way to optimize the scene and get everything looking the best it can.
Yeah, so that sort of wraps up our environment section. And as you can tell, obviously efficiency is the name of the game. And we need to adapt our teams to make sure that when we've got a really big project in, that we expand and we have enough artists for the tasks. So that's what Vine's really good at. We can scale and contract as needed. So we're very flexible in that regard. And we have obviously the M&E collection, which we use Maya and flow production tracking to really help keep a streamlined process so that everything knits together really well and we've got a really solid pipeline to work from. And then moving on to our creature section. So we're going to start with The Tourist, which is on the BBC. And this is, again, the project which I really enjoyed working on. Not just working on, but also just watching. It's really cool. I think one of the things I most liked about it was the variety of work that we did. So you can see here, we did things like some background replacements, some DMP environment changes like that. Quite standard for us to do that and completely alter the environments that they're in. We also worked on some weather effects. Some of them were in comp and some of them we did in CG as well. So here we've got like a sandstorm, and we've got props in there to help sort of build that sort of feeling of strong winds and things. And we've got our sound effects, and we also did some vehicles like this airplane, and obviously the creatures as well, which is what we're going to talk about. And this boar we did was like massively over-engineered for the shot that it was in. It's just this one shot that it's in quite far away, but we wanted to do a really good job, so we thought we'd explore some new things. And we've got that kangaroo there, which is one shot, and we also have these tortoises having a good time. And this is what we're going to discuss now with Jake, how we built these amazing creatures.
Cool. So the brief for this was two tortoises which are being used across a few shots, and the majority of the shots are pretty close to camera. So from the get-go, you have to, we knew that the assets had to hold up really nicely. So they're the same tortoise, but two different variations of it. And the majority of how we did this was just changing the patterns on the shell, and then you change the dirt in the skin and some of the small little changes like that. But primarily the focus on this was getting the shell looking really good, because I feel like that's the main part of the creature which really helps sell it. So yeah, an example of how the tortoise looked in Maya. This is just the low poly version. And in this case, we were using displacement maps. So the tortoise is split across multiple UDIMs and multiple displacement maps, just to really get that high fidelity noise that's, the displacement that's coming out from the geometry. And keeping it really optimized once again, so your viewport's fine and everything's good. And then when you push it to Arnold, you get the maximum detail you can. So the tortoises were also both rigged in Maya. They're both using the same rig, but different shells and different shaders on them. Full IK and FK controls. Now it's mainly the head, mouth, and body controls on this, and we needed to make sure not to over-engineer a rig like this, because you can very, very quickly go too far. So we knew that the use case of these shots, how far they were going to move, and they don't move very quickly and stuff, so their movement's quite limited. So optimizing there was really important. So a quick just glance at the shell shader. I like to try and keep this quite simple, this part. I mean, mostly it's the subsurface, which is really what sells your creature when it's this close to camera, and a shell which has light bouncing inside of it. So it's using cavity maps as well, which is just to bring out that noise. And then when it's close up. This is how the final look dev looked. So the subsurface is in the fingernails, I guess that's what you call them, claws, the skin, and then the shell. So we spent a lot of time just trying to really refine that to get it really nice looking. And because of the lighting in the shot, it's quite harsh, so you can really see that nice shadowing on the detail. And I think it came out really well. This is one of my first creatures that I did at Vine, and it was a really nice dive in for such a quite high fidelity asset to have used across multiple shots.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the biggest successes. I think it's one which just blends into the scene perfectly, even though it can be the focal point quite close to camera. You don't question it as a CG asset, and I really was really impressed with how well it turned out. It's a very cool, strong creature to have. Oh, it's not again. Go again. There we go. And then our final creature that we're going to be discussing is from War of the Worlds, which is on Canal Plus. Actually, you can watch it on Disney now. So this is the intro to our alien creature. So to create this creature, we started in the very traditional method of concept design. So we started with some sketches. We had a brilliant concept artist on the team helping us do this. And we were in close contact with the client all the time and the directors just to make sure that it's what they wanted and how they envisage it to be. So that's discussing whether we want a biped or a quadruped or even more. And we landed on the design that you see in the bottom right corner, which is our main alien creature. And when we got those sketches approved, we then go into the modeling phase. So we had to model this with the, I guess, limited amount of sketches that we had, and we had to interpret that. We had to know where the joints had to be and how they worked and make sure nothing intersected. Obviously, it's quite easy to draw these things and not worry too much about how it functions. But when you have to actually make it, you have to really consider how things move, make sure that things don't crash into each other and they've got enough flexibility in them and mobility, because this creature, he does a lot in the whole show, and he's quite prolific in it as well. He's in a lot of shots, so we really had to pay close attention to how we built it. And then once we built it, we put the shaders and textures on, like you see in the middle there. And typically what you would find on a big show is often the art department would build a prop or a creature or something in real life, and then you scan it and then you convert it into a CGI asset. But we did the reverse of this. So we ended up making everything, and then we sent our Maya files directly to the art department, which they used to build their model from real life one-to-one scale, which is perfect for the actors, for eye contact, for lighting reference for us in post as well. So because they tried to paint it as we textured it, which is really cool. So it's a really useful thing to have and a very useful prop. One thing that we need to talk about, of course, is bringing it to life. So these are just stills. When you try and bring a creature to life, which especially one that doesn't have facial features, right? You can't animate it frowning or smiling or anything. You have to bring that within its body. Which is why our animator spent a lot of time working on walk cycles and other cycles that it might do. And in that time, we just kept on saying alien creature, and it just got a bit monotonous and annoying. And it didn't really help us connect to the creature. And you can't bring something to life if you can't connect to it. So normally what you do is you name it. So we wondered what to call it, and we didn't want to go for a typical name like Jake or Bob or whatever. Sorry, Jake.
That's right.
We needed something that sort of represented the character a bit more, and the animator actually came up with it, and no better person to do it than the animator. And he decided that the best name for it was, well, it's Fluffy. So here's Fluffy. And that name stuck as well. And it might seem a bit ironic, this sort of ruthless killing machine being called Fluffy, but actually it kind of works. And it really stuck. We started talking about Fluffy internally and calling him that. And then that obviously transitioned into the client calls, and they caught on with it and they started calling it as Fluffy as well. And all through all 3 seasons, all the many directors, because it was a different director pretty much for every few episodes, um, they all called it Fluffy. The actors called it Fluffy, and it was quite nice actually, because then there was this connection that you formed with this being. So yeah, naming it's actually quite important, surprisingly. So to bring Fluffy into our pipeline, we built a few tools in Maya. Just loop these to help the artists keep everything efficient. So you bring in the animation alembic with the reference node at the beginning. So you go through this shelf that we built. You assign which alien creature version it's going to be, and then you can assign the shaders as well. And they've got various types of shaders attached to represent different stages in the story, or perhaps just the environment that it's been in most. So there are ones where it's covered in moss and things because it's been in the woods a lot. There are some which are covered in blood, and there are some with rust and bullet holes and things. So we really tried to keep it a nice variety. Most of the time there was just one in the shot, but occasionally you would have multiple. So we had to build like a really efficient um, low poly rig as well, which is what you can see on the right. That's a super low poly one. The one on its own, even with the high poly, it was actually fine for most of the time. But when you've got like 20 of them, you really need to sort of make sure that you're efficient with that. So just in terms of general stats, we had about 140 faces for that before render time. So obviously it smoothed a bit more at render time as well to get some of the displacements working. And the low poly rig was less than 400 faces, so it was really, really low. And then we had 8 different texture variations to go on top of that as well to really spread them out. And yeah, like I said, he was very prolific. He was in all 3 seasons for about 400 shots, of which I rendered many of myself, and formed quite a good bond, Fluffy and I. And he's a very efficient killer. Yeah, 100 headshots or so in all of those shots that he was in, and of course, BAFTA nominated, which we're really proud of. So to talk more about how we integrate it into the environment, what we like to do is when the on-set supervisor is shooting a Fluffy scene, we would get him to photogram the whole area. We can take that into reality capture, and we can take that then into Maya with projected textures on and everything. So then we've got really good reference for reflections and things, and also for the animator to then make sure that the feet stick on the ground nicely so that it's actually connected and within the world that we want it to sit in. So this was a really good way that we used to get Fluffy in the environment. But what I want to do is talk more about the character progression of Fluffy, because he was in all the seasons and he was quite a main character, even though there were multiple clones of them. You start to feel differently about Fluffy throughout the three seasons, and this is quite an interesting thing to talk about because the contrast between them is quite different when you start your opinion of Fluffy to when you end it. So I'm just going to go into that rather than the technical side. So we can see Fluffy often coming into frame, stalking its prey, head down, forceful feet on the ground. You really feel its weight, and it often comes out of the crevices and whatever else, out the darkness and all sorts, very menacingly. And when Fluffy is giving chase, as a viewer, you start to realize that's pretty much game over for whoever is being chased. Fluffy has 2 weapons, one of which is firing projectile discs at whoever is the victim. And also, the projectiles run out. So he also has a bolt gun coming out of his head, which is unlimited usage, sort of like how you might kill cattle, is a bolt that just goes straight into the head. So it's very efficient at killing, and very ruthless as well, even just staring at bodies being burnt. And he often gives chase as well. He doesn't just walk everywhere. He does have a bit of a run to him. Not a good sign, not something you want to see coming towards you, that's for sure. But when he gets there, when he knows that you're maimed from his projectiles, he'll get up close and personal, and you'll feel even though you can't touch Fluffy, you know he feels cold to touch. He's a raw killer, and you will get right in your face, and that's probably not the thing that you want to see right before the lights go out. Um, and in this one, you can really see the texture variation there with the bullet holes and things, and all the moss and the blood that was on it. Um, and yeah, so this is primarily in the first season. We see Fluffy just constantly doing this. So it's a relentless, full-on killing machine, um, which doesn't give in. But the story changes as it goes on. We see a different side to Fluffy. So we see that there are two factions within the humans fighting each other. So there are these rebels, and then there's the other humans fighting them. Um, and now we see Fluffy with humans rather than just attacking them. We know what he's capable of because we've seen it many times in previous episodes. But now he's sort of standing different. He's walking different. He's more like a reliable dog, a loyal dog, and almost tame, so to speak. And this isn't something that we're used to. But then, as that happens more and more in the episodes, we know what he's capable of because we can see him stalking. Again, he's got his head down. He's trying to find someone here, and he's walking with purpose. Um, and you can see that the very placed feet, and when it gets startled, it gets its attention grabbed. It follows. It's like a sniffer dog, and it is relentless. It will use its body to get through doors and charge its way through whatever it needs to get to where it needs to be. So yeah, we see a different side of Fluffy in a progression. We know he's capable of these bad things, but we also see that actually, yeah, he's sort of like a Labrador kind of fluffy dog, um, which is an interesting contrast. But that still doesn't end there. Even later on in the season, things get even weirder and a bit more different. We think this is going to be a typical scene where Fluffy enters, he sees a human. The human is scared, obviously. I mean, she comes with quite a few run-ins with Fluffy. I don't know how she survives, but she runs away, and we see Fluffy enter. And there's a ball there, and we're like, "Why is the ball there? Is it coincidence, or is there something else going on?" But Fluffy's instincts kick in. He detects that there's someone there. He can sense it, so he goes off trying to find him. We see that he's not quite right this one. He's almost a bit confused or disorientated, but he still gives chase. He still wants to get his prey. But as we say, he's disorientated. He didn't quite make it. He ran into the door and he gets a bit confused and he starts stumbling around. And suddenly we kind of feel a bit differently. We're sort of almost feeling sorry for Fluffy. Like he's suffering in a sense. And that killing prong that comes out of his head is now being used differently. So we see it approach the ball. He gives it a little tap. And now he's sort of like an interested, I don't know, like a child trying to work its way through his world, trying to explore things. So that's quite an interesting change. And it even changes further when he gets to like a caring side. Again, we think it's an attack. And again, it's the same woman who somehow survives all of these attacks. We think this is probably the bitter end. He goes out for the kill, but then the doll that she was holding, and it is just a doll. I guess Fluffy doesn't know that. And it starts to cradle it and starts to, excuse me, rock it back and forth. So we start to see a really soft side, but humans come in doing what they do best and destroy things. And now we kind of feel like it was unjustified. We don't like to see Fluffy being bullied. We've gone from feeling fear of this creature to now going to pure sympathy and actually sort of rooting for Fluffy. So I really enjoyed working with this creature, with this character, in all the many environments it was in, and learning how without a face rig and all these kinds of things, you can still bring in a lot of emotion. And even here, you kind of see a little extra where he's pushing a pushchair, which is really a strange sight, but still it's quite endearing. And that's Fluffy. Yeah, that's the end of our talk, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, we would love to hear them.
Thanks, guys. Phenomenal job. The Showreel at the beginning was epic, good music, good breakdowns. It's hard to top it, but you guys topped it throughout with a lot of great breakdowns and looks at the environments and characters. So thank you for that presentation. We do have a lot of questions, so
Great.
I'll
Yeah,
just
that's
shoot
cool.
them at you. The first one's from Ling Yu, who says, "Thanks for the amazing speech. I have a question about the environment building. Is there a specific method you use for making sure the assets assemble well, scales are a match if the assets are built from different artists?"
Mm. Good
Yeah,
question.
I assume that's for the time break facility for the rock
I guess
assets.
any, like
Yeah,
we have
yeah,
a system in place that
yeah.
we want to keep things accurate. So
Yeah, we have shelf tools. So once again, using shelf tools as much as we can in Maya, and also for other softwares too, where we try and uniform scale. So if we're building an asset, we'll bring in a 6 foot reference person,
mm,
and that's kind of like the baseline. And then if you're starting to go up in any other, much bigger scale than that, you'll normally start with one asset, kind of get happy with the scale from that, and then build everything else around it. If you're starting on shots that are from, like if you're doing like a set extension, a lot of the time we'll have like a LiDAR scanner or a photogrammetry from reality capture that we can bring in, and then build all of our assets based on that. But that, once again, is still scaled right from the start to our working scale that we use, which is decimeters. Um,
yeah. And I guess sort of to touch on the point about cutting corners, um, we cut the corners we know we can cut. That comes with experience, I think. And it depends on the shot and what was happening. And when it comes to scale, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that if you build things wrong in terms of their scale, their proportions, and their distance to camera and all that, it tends to fall apart quite quickly. So I think that's one thing that you should always stick to is a proper scale. We have like human sizes that we just bring in, so we have a scale reference. We know how big it is compared to a person. We're used to seeing what a human size is. Um, so we try to keep that always accurate and yeah, keep measurements accurate. Like I say, Jake said, we use decimeters, so one Maya unit will be 10 centimeters, and that helps with large scenes when you've got a lot to deal with, but also on the smaller ones you don't have to build everything too teeny tiny. That's kind of I guess an industry standard sort of thing in Maya. You just work with decimeters a lot of the time.
yeah.
But yeah, I think we've just got to keep it accurate.
Yeah, and if you're just another little thing to add, maybe that's just kind of beneficial is, let's say you're building some form of street or a city. There's a lot of reference out there for open street maps, which you can bring in real world data straight away. So you're going to have a real world street. You could bring in Cambridge, for instance, and then let's say you want to kind of make a futuristic city from there. If you're going to build up from a real world scale straight away, your final result's going to look much more realistic because there's that grounding that we're already used to in the real world. So just small things like that. That's the type of thing that Peb was touching on, where you're kind of getting used to the workflows that we have and different methods that you can use.
Next question from Christopher. This one's on Fluffy, who I also think is brilliantly named, so I understand why the name stuck.
Totally is, yeah.
How long did it take to design, create, and animate Fluffy?
Quite a good chunk of time actually. So when I first started at Vine, it was like the end of 2018. That was the first job I worked on, and when I had arrived at Vine, I think they were already more or less wrapped up the concept, and the concept phase would have gone on for a couple of weeks, perhaps, back and forth with the client, and then we went on to the modeling phase. And again, because it was something that wasn't fully set in stone. We had a concept that they liked, but when you start building it and you get the proportions right and everything, you send that to the client. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of tweaks to make. And like I was saying on the talk, with getting the joints working correctly and all that, and the rig flowing properly, that was probably another month or two of just solid building and reworking back and forth. Texture wise, I think we managed to do that in about a month because there was a few different variations. Again, that was just that one artist texturing the whole thing. He did a fantastic job. And then with the animation, the rigger actually was the animator. He did both, so he sort of managed to sort of evolve it over the time. Even over the whole 3 seasons, there'll be tweaks made. Maybe there was a scene where Fluffy had lost a leg or something, so we had to sort of adjust the rig for those situations. Um, yeah, that was a sort of a never-ending process, I guess, in that regard. But we did try, and we had what was called our Fluffy Bible, and it was basically a massive spreadsheet of different walk cycles and animations that we'd built up so that we could almost block in animations really quickly. So we didn't have to start from scratch every time. We had various walk cycles, run cycles, dragging, jumping, running, running, killing, and all these kinds of things that we could almost drag and drop into our scenes from a library, so that Fluffy just automatically went into the right positions, and then it was just a case of tweaking. So yeah, I guess that was sort of never a never-ending sort of phase, but the bulk of it was done over a couple of months in the animation phase. So yeah, all in all, I guess 3 or 4 months to get Fluffy into a really solid state.
Awesome. Question from Ryan. Do you have any experience using AI stand-ins for part of a creature, such as a mechanical beast like Fluffy?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to say more so far. What I've used them for anyway would just be like I was mentioning on the time break facility, just for motion capture crowds, agents like that. But from a more close-up hero asset, not so much from my
No, I guess
perspective.
not.
Um, but I could definitely see how they'd be beneficial if you're doing
It
it.
could
Yeah,
work. Yeah, it
yeah.
could work. It might be good for in terms of, updating a character so that so you don't break the rig. You can just update the stand-in. So yeah, there's definitely a use case for it. We haven't done it ourselves.
All right. Question from Nazir. What role does Python scripting and Maya play in your studio's day-to-day production? And then the second part of the question is, what's one script or tool that radically changed your productivity?
Good question. So with Python, yeah, we use Python a lot to make our own tools and things. We often use some tools to help us write them,
Yeah.
which is great. Um, I don't know if there was one particular tool that I can think of. It's nice being able to write them. Because in Maya you can use PyMail, which is Mel but in Python, so you get to use some of the same terms that you're familiar with, and that really helps keep things tidy uh, and quite relatively easy to script. So it's just about automating processes. I don't think there's sort of one sort of hero script
Yeah.
which revolute maybe like a rename tool or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, we use it for, like Ped said, I mean, it's a lot of custom tools, and there's also tools that we'll make per project. So if you have a very specific example of something that could be automated quite quickly, and especially if it's like a repetitive task, we'll definitely make a tool or something for that, just to
Yeah.
help a single artist, or if there's multiple artists, you share that script, and it'll get put to the show shelf, or the overall shelf that we'll use. So yeah, I mean, we use it frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question from Morton. First of all, they say, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Regarding optimization, do you see AI as an assistant in your process, or is it hands-on in every part?
I guess, well, yeah. Uh, Denoising potentially, I
Yeah,
suppose.
we use
Yeah.
denoising, so we use the Intel denoiser that's sort of built into Arnold, which is really good. And it's come on really well, especially when you get it to like a good sort of 80-90% almost noise-free image. You can then just slap on the denoiser and it works super well.
Yeah.
So that's really, really good and very, very quick. With AI stuff throughout, we don't use it much in the 3D department. We have it in comp department a little bit. So recently we worked on a face, a de-aging of a character, a very well-known actor whose age, he's an older gentleman, and we had to de-age him for like 20 years. So we built a really nice, like a really, really good full CGI head, which tracked it, had animations in it and everything, blend shapes and all sorts. And I think we use MetaHuman for getting the face rig in
Yeah.
there and
Yeah.
face captures and things. It was really good. And the renders on their own look great, but to get that final detail in there, we use a level of AI over the top as like almost like a filter, especially around the mouth.
Yeah. To try and get rid of the uncanny valley.
Uncanny
Just
valley
push it
type
past that
stuff,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
which worked really well. And we're very conscious about how we use AI. We don't want to be unethical about it. And I think this is something that Autodesk also is very strong opinion of, is that not to sort of abuse copyright material and everything. So we're the same. We use data that we generate ourselves. So synthetic data is often used when we do. But yeah, I can definitely see it being used more in 3D, just maybe not quite yet.
Especially for the last 20%, 20 or 30%. And then
Yeah.
or the first 10 or 20%, I guess. But yeah, not from start to finish as of yet.
Thankfully.
You mentioned compositing in your answer there at some point. We have a question from Christopher who's asking, what software do you use for compositing?
It's all done in Nuke, so everything's done in Nuke for us. I think yeah, it's all Nuke.
Yeah.
Simple answer.
And 3D artists use it too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so it's kind of across the board. So any artist is, you know, if you're lighting a shot, you'll still put out a bash comp or a slap comp, which then just gives the composer like a rough idea of what you're intending and what you're kind of aiming for, and then they'll just pick it up and take it to final. And then or you'll go back and forth at that stage really with your supervisor or your lead, and then it kind of moves up from there.
I have a question here from Robert. He says, I have an iMac Pro with 128 gigabytes of memory, and every time I have to create a large scene with instances, it grinds to a halt. I'm considering a Windows system, but I noticed you are using a Linux OS. Do you mind elaborating on your system a little bit?
Yeah, so all of our computers are in a data center somewhere in London, so we connect to them remotely. And we have quite a mixture actually of different machines. The compositors will actually use machines which are a lot less powerful. They'll only have like 16 cores. I think 128 gig RAM, which is enough, really good.
Yeah.
And half decent graphics cards. But the CG artists will use ones which are quite a lot more powerful. There'll be a minimum of I think 48 cores. And again 128 gig RAM, some of them 256. Decent graphics cards. It might be even a graphics issue that you're facing on a Mac, to be honest. In the viewport, if you've got loads of stuff to view, then it would probably be that limitation. Yeah, we use it all on Linux. We were on Windows when I first joined, and then we transitioned to Linux afterwards when we started to expand and stuff. And you can definitely do it on Windows. But there are some really nice builds now of Linux which are quite user friendly, so that you can just fire them up, and they're already sort of quite quite intuitive to use from the get-go with the familiar menus and things that you're used to. So there are some good builds. I probably couldn't name any off the top of my head. I guess Mint, Linux Mint is often sort of a go-to build. So you can try and explore, maybe search some forums on some what people are using, because there's and they're free as well, so it's good.
Yeah, and that's not to say that we don't use Windows too. I mean, we it's off pipeline, but there's other softwares which we'll use Windows for. But yeah, primarily Linux, really.
Yeah, it's usually a bit more stable as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. I have a question from John. It's a two-parter, so I'll ask you the first part. To begin, interesting question. How do you coordinate with clients on track and prevent them from changing their mind once you get large chunks of the work completed, creating redundant modeling and rendering, major milestones, weekly check-ins, fly-throughs, etc.?
You can't. The only time you can is when you say it's going to cost more money. So yeah, it's difficult because you get it to a state, and often it's to their wishes. You can obviously influence their wishes by sort of biasing the good results which you like, and sort of going, hey, look at this is nice. But yeah, if they change, and they do change their mind a lot later on in the pipeline, you either just have to sort of grit your teeth and get on with it, or just you get your producers on side, and the producers do their jobs and tell them it's going to cost more money, and they go, oh well, it's all right, I kind of like it, it's fine. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. It depends on the client, I guess.
Good answer. And then the second part of this question, do you have any requests from architecture and engineering world for large real estate developments, etc.? Can it be cost effective?
I don't know if it's cost effective personally. I don't think they tend to ask VFX studios for those sorts of things often, because there are specific. I mean, you will probably know.
Yeah, Archviz Studios sort of, I guess, handle more of that, really specializing in it. And I guess a lot of that starts from like very still based and then kind of work their way up, where we're almost solely in motion, I guess. Everything's in a sequence. And it's a different kind of workflow, I suppose. A lot of the architectural visualization renders, for the most part, are very clean and very fresh, where we're trying to match whatever the environment's being shot in. So there's a lot of overlap with techniques and softwares and stuff, but they're kind of there's still a decent size separation between the final result that you're actually going for.
I think we could do a better job than most art biz companies personally, and I think they should look at VFX spaces, but they won't, because it's just the way of the industry. But we could make it look better.
Starting a war.
I believe you guys. I believe you. Question from Anag: Is VineFX open for internships?
It's sort of a yes and no question. We have the occasional one that we have, but they're usually ones that are in person, so they'll come to the studio. But they're not very frequent. I think that's something that we're definitely exploring, and we would like to launch like a full program for it, because I think it'd be really good to do that. And we see some other studios having a lot of success doing that, and hearing some nice stories of people who've started as an intern and then worked their way up and things. So yeah, it's definitely something that we would be very much interested in pushing. But at the moment, it's quite limited. We do sort of work experience things where people will come in for a week and just sort of look around and look over your shoulder, and we might give them the odd task, put them in SpeedTree for a bit or something. But yeah, nothing set in stone as a program.
Awesome. Question from Ricardo: Do you have any custom tools for flow production tracking or mixed with other DCCs?
Yeah, we have well, the great thing about flow production tracking, I guess, is that a lot of it works really well out the box. So we haven't customized it massively. We've made it work for us. So we've tweaked a few things. There's a few tools where we can publish things via flow production, but without using the default menus. But we do use those as well. So we're pretty much out of the box in terms of the tools that are available. But yeah, we tweak when needed, and we use it in other software too. So we have integrations into Nuke, into Houdini, into Maya, and a few others where we have the integrations that all talks to each other really nicely.
We are at the top of the hour, but we have room for one more question. So Sheldon is asking, well, first of all, they say thank you for the amazing panel. And then regarding the use of third-party DCCs like Maya and Arnold in your work, does VineFX implement real-time capabilities similar to Unreal Engine?
Yeah, so it's something that we've been slowly exploring. Not necessarily jumped into anywhere where it's kind of in production, let's say. But I know that there's a lot of advancement, and we're always looking to try and create the best work we can, and kind of, if the tool's there, we're going to try and use it as that's kind of the way of the game, really, and that's what we really like to do. But we tried doing some Gaussian splat work in Unreal a while ago, and it was still a little bit early then. This is probably about 2 years ago now, so since then it's come on massively. And that's definitely something that is we're looking into, and that kind of thing. But outside of that, for actual shot work, not yet. I mean, we don't do anything with volumes into like our side of things. We work with other companies that do volumes, but from an actual production standpoint, nothing really yet, I'd say.
No, yeah, it's something that, yeah, like Jake says, we're always trying to explore new things, and it's definitely a hot topic that comes up a lot, where we're like, oh, we could try this thing real time. Usually doesn't work.
Yeah, especially for posted previous though. That's something where I know that we're really wanting to push. Very quick to iterate, and you get a nice result quite quickly, and then you can go back and forth with clients and get feedback, and then really get to the point where you're like, okay, this is now where we can put this into production and push it to final. So that's something we want to do, and kind of are implementing.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're all out of time, but I did want to thank both of you for the incredible presentation and Q&A segment. You're both super talented, and you work with an equally talented team at VineFX. So it was great to see how you guys brought all these shows and projects to life. Um, Before we head out, I did want to, ask you if there's anything else you'd want to add or share with everyone who tuned in today.
Just thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, really thank you so much for listening. It's we're very, very proud of this work that we do.
Yeah.
As you might be able to tell, I'm guessing from the way we're talking about things and stuff. And it's, we're all very passionate about this, and I hope all of you are too listening, and it's kind of inspiring in some way if you learned something or just found it interesting and really enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and thank you for the questions.
Really appreciate everyone tuning in and asking great questions as well. So it's always fun to do these. So thank you.
Yeah, been great.
So, well, thanks, guys. Have a good one. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.